Well, welcome to the Fit Vegan Masterclass. Yeah, excellent. So the goal of this training, this workshop, is to help you understand really the components needed to really become a fit, strong, healthy vegan, plant-based eater, however you'd like to refer to yourself, right? So we're going to be looking at some of the major components that are necessary when we think about how does this play along with nutrition, with training, with recovery, all that type of stuff. So to get started, just want to give you a little bit more background on myself. So here you can see my before and after. Actually, at this point, I've been vegan for over 11 years. Before that, I was vegetarian for 2 years and then discovered, oh, veganism. Okay, yeah, milk and dairy and eggs. Okay, well, if I'm getting rid of meat and animal stuff, let me go ahead and do that too. But what you're mainly going to see is the difference here. You know, I'd say in this left photo, very under-muscled, right? More so like I didn't really feel comfortable not wearing my shirt, right? I felt just like, you know, a little bit probably, this term is probably skinny fat. I was just under-muscled, right? And I just had extra body fat. But here's the thing, I was eating just anything that was vegan, right? So oiled fried potatoes, you know, if it tasted good and it was vegan, I was okay with it, right? Which is fine, right? But eventually I realized, you know, I really do want to work on not just, you know, physical appearance, but my total health. And so over time, I ended up switching to more of a higher protein, whole food type of diet where I was beginning to resistance train. And now you guys have probably heard, I do focus on more body weight and calisthenics exercises. So I like to prove that you can do this without animals, without weights, without a gym. It's all within the grasp of everybody, right? I truly believe that. And so since I went on this journey, you know, I've been eating this way now for maybe 6 years at some point. But at this point, you know, I'm a certified personal trainer and certified nutrition coach. And I've personally worked with over 100 people one-on-one to really help them transform and to, you know, achieve that level of fitness they're looking for. So what's cool about this too is when you look at the weight difference, you know, I was in the mid 140s here and now I'm in the 160s. So that goes to show that you can't only just look at the scale, right? And a lot of times, you know, we think about the scale being the major thing that's showing either success or failure. And the reality is you can keep your scale number the same. And Wendy, we were talking about this, right? You can build more muscle, lose fat, and keep the scale number the same. So we only like to look at the scale as just data and reference. It's almost like a mile marker to show us where we're at. So let's jump in. Today we're going to be talking about nutrition, exercise, and then rest and recovery, and how all these things kind of blend together and what's probably the most important. So, you know, this is kind of tough because they're all very important, but would anyone like to take a guess on what is the biggest thing that's going to move the needle out of these three? Nutrition. I know it's a tough one. I would say nutrition, right? Now, here's the thing. This doesn't all exist within a vacuum, right? So you can have great nutrition, but if you have no rest, no recovery, it's not really going to work out well either, right? But from my experience working with a lot of people, not just doing this with myself, you can do everything else right, you know, but if your nutrition is off, you're not going to see the changes that you want. Like you can definitely get stronger and eat a bunch of junk food, but you're not going to see the definition, the weight loss, the fat loss. It's just not going to happen. Same thing if you're not sleeping and not recovering. So what we're going to do is put these puzzle pieces together today. So as an overview, to give you guys an idea of where we're going to be, when we look at nutrition, we're looking at what type of diet, the protein goals, the calorie goals, as well as what types of foods to actually eat to hit those goals, and then understanding our micronutrients. So that's going to be the first thing we're going to focus on. So let's think about all the different types of vegan diets that we could probably eat, right? So this was me definitely when I first started the first 5 years, general vegan, you know, if it's vegan, I'm eating it. I will say at that time, I was heavily, you know, into caffeine and coffee and, you know, energy drinks. So I'd have a lot of coffee in the morning and then afternoon, you know, you feel that afternoon slump. Then I go to get an energy drink, even though it's organic and it's from a tea, it's still just pushing my adrenal glands. So therefore, I was not eating enough total food that I needed. I was eating a lot less. So that's some of the issues when you're just eating kind of everything or anything, right? Now, I know it's kind of tough because when you think about eating a vegan, or plant-based diet, there's obviously a lot of things that we are no longer eating, So going from omnivorous to vegan, you're blocking out a lot of stuff. But then when we go to trying to be healthier, we also have to make that choice to say, well, let's push those things away. So maybe not as many like cookies and candies and things, even if they are vegan, if we want to hit those goals. So general vegan, as long as it's vegan, you're good. Now there's also raw vegan, right? So raw vegan is of course going to be no cooked or maybe sometimes slightly potentially steamed or so. So raw vegan is also going to be another thing where you're pushing more things out. So in that case, you just need to make sure you're getting enough of what you need there. Now this one's a little bit more rare, low carb or keto vegan. Has anyone ever tried to do like a low carb diet while being vegan? Yeah, it's a little tough. Some people try it. It's pretty wild. I guess it's doable, but it's just, yeah, I wouldn't recommend that one. That's going to be the one I would not recommend. And then we have whole foods plant-based, right? So that's generally going to be more like from like Caldwell Esselstyn style, single ingredient whole foods. Generally, you're going to do like the SOS, right? The no salt, no oil, no sugar. Now the thing is with this, this is where I made my initial transition to being a bit more healthy, right? I was like, let me focus on more whole foods, more single ingredient foods. And I still really, really value that a lot. But I think there's an addendum I'd like to add to that. So that's not going to be my only thing I would focus on. So when we think about what diet of, what kind of plant-based or vegan diet would be best for your optimal body composition, right? And when I say body composition, we mean just less body fat percentage and more total muscle mass. This is going to be my recommendation. It's going to be a higher protein, whole food, plant-based diet with a balanced mix of carbohydrates and fats, right? We don't want to just ostracize and push away total like the macronutrients, right? So your macronutrients are your carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So when someone goes keto, they're pushing away all the carbohydrates. So that's what we're usually going to see more on the carnivore side, right? When someone's eating lots of meat, lots of, maybe eggs and things like that, they're getting hardly any carbohydrates. So a lot of times, they're, oh, things are great. I'm not having any bad interactions anymore. My health is going good for maybe like the first couple weeks. But then as you might know, they're not getting any fiber. So it's going to be a weird situation with how often they're going to the bathroom and all that. So fortunately, you guys all align with, okay, that's definitely not the right choice. And that's the thing. We want to have a moderate approach to nutrition, right? So we don't need to say, oh, we need to eliminate fats. Now I'd say we don't need oil, but fats are very, very healthy, as we'll get into. So that balanced mix is going to allow us to have a very grounded, well-approached perspective on eating really healthy food, but making sure they're also getting a little bit more higher protein to add into some muscle mass, recovery, and performance goals. So protein-rich plant foods, right? These are going to be the number one thing I like to focus on when creating meals. And we'll go into the Power Meal Formula workshop I have coming up either tomorrow or the next day. And we'll go into specifically a lot more of those foods and how we combine them. But this is why more protein-rich plant foods, and there's a lot of them, that's why these are going to be really good for us. So they're more satiating and they keep us fuller longer. So if who here has ever just made a bowl of veggies? Like you're just eating only vegetables. Maybe you just first started out. I see a hand back there, right? Right? Of course. Vegetables are great for us. We want vegetables. All the phytonutrients, all the fiber, all the, the micronutrients. However, you might not really be satiated, right? And that satiety, yes, fiber helps, but protein and also fats are really going to help you feel satiated, meaning you feel full. So one of the things, when someone is either transitioning to go to a plant-based diet, or maybe they're just, a little bit hesitant. It's like, well, what happens? If I don't get enough, I need more, right? That's where having higher protein foods can really help. Make you feel like, oh, I had a good meal. I'm not hungry. This is great. Protein is also going to help you build and retain muscle mass. So the RDA, the recommended amount of protein that the government suggests, right, is just super low, like 40, 50 grams a day. So there's going to be no issue with someone being deficient in protein, right? And that's one of the biggest cases that a lot of, even doctors in the whole food plant-based movement will have. Okay, you don't need to worry about protein, just eat enough food, eat enough calories, you're going to be good. And I totally agree with that, right? You're going to be okay. Like, you're not going to be deficient in protein. However, if you're trying to build more muscle, if you are trying to optimize, and we'll talk about why muscle is important, right? It optimizes your ability to burn more calories at rest. It obviously helps you be stronger. It helps your immune system function. It is one of the biggest things we can do to benefit long-term health, because that muscle mass is very important to preserving, like I said, that immune function and strength as we age, but also with performance, right? So if you don't necessarily have those goals, I would argue if I snapped my fingers and added 10 pounds of muscle to everybody here, we'd all be healthier and stronger and fitter. I don't think there's gonna be any downside to having more muscle, right? So the other thing that's important is we're burning more calories at rest. So it makes it a lot easier to stay leaner. So the more muscle we have, the more calories we burn. And also the more total amount of protein inside of our diet, the more total calories we're burning. So if you have one diet here, that's 2,000 calories, and another diet that's 2,000 calories, let's just say this one has 50 grams of protein. This one's got 100. This one over here, guess what? It's going to burn more total calories due to the thermic effect of food that protein has. So let's see. The other thing is protein-rich foods, which generally the biggest higher protein foods are going to be from, anyone want to guess what kind of family of different types of foods? I'll say it's not fruits. It's not vegetables, technically. Like, what did I hear? Legumes, yes, right? So it's very simple to think, okay, I need higher protein. Where are my legume sources, right? So of course, quinoa, even like rice has protein in it, right? Bananas have protein in them, right? They're just going to be smaller amounts. Now, I'd say quinoa is more like a medium source, but when you think about what is a very protein-rich food that's whole food, definitely your legumes. So lentils are going to be number one, but all your beans are going to be good to go too, all your different peas. So the benefit of having those in your diet is not only do they have the protein, but they have the fiber that our society desperately needs. So most people probably get, I work with people who are plant-based and who are not plant-based. And I've seen people get like 8 grams of fiber a day. And I get like 80 or 100, and I'm like, that's crazy. So I'm like, let's just get you to 25, right? Like, let's just 15 even, right? So if you include these foods, you're going to get that fiber, which is great for clearing out that extra toxicity in your large intestine. Throughout, really your whole body, but also just overall motility, being able to just use the bathroom regularly, get rid of the stuff we no longer need in our body, right? So it's really a happy colon, and that's very, very tied to long-term health as well. Getting able to release the things we no longer need inside the body. Now, protein is also going to help us, this is a big one, regulate insulin and blood sugar spikes. So as much as I love apples, for example, if I eat an apple, there will be a little blood sugar spike, right? So what is the issue with that? Well, generally, whenever we have a carbohydrate, and this isn't to say carbohydrate is bad, this is where the whole low-carb movement bases their whole theory off of, so let's understand it right. But if I have, say, either an apple, which still might spike it a little bit, but let's just say I have a big bag of like Starburst or Skittles, right? Probably not, I don't even know if they're vegan or not, but I haven't eaten that stuff in forever. But if I have that stuff, blood sugar spikes. So it sends this hormone called insulin in my body. It says, okay, we need to shuttle all these carbohydrates into 2 different places, my liver and then my muscle cells. So if I keep doing that over and over and over, my body starts losing that signal. It's just like we're just in storage mode. We don't have the ability to actually burn the carbohydrates. So when I add in either fiber or protein or fat to that same sugar, so if I have an apple with some peanut butter, it slows that spike. Now again, why is that important? We have this thing called, you guys remember, has anyone ever cooked a turkey in your former life? Right? You see the turkey go in, former life, right? Your non-vegan life. But you put the turkey in, and it's, originally it's more of a kind of beige color, and then eventually gets brown, right? It starts cooking. That's a process called glycation. So it's literally cooking. When we have these blood sugar spikes, we are slowly cooking our cells. So the more we can reduce these big spikes throughout our lives, the more we can just have a better baseline of overall health. So as you can see, this goes beyond just let's build muscle, let's get a six-pack or something. This is very tied into long-term health. That's why I love this stuff. So let's go over some high-protein plant-based foods. We're gonna have some high and some medium ones. So feel free to take a picture of this. There's gonna be some really good things to add in. So when we think about soy-based, definitely tempeh, tofu, and edamame are gonna be some good ones. Now you'll have some people that might argue, well, is that a single ingredient food or is that a whole food? And I just want to briefly talk about processing, right? We have a couple of different kinds of processing. We have mechanical processing, which imagine you put some food into a blender, you blend it up, you turn it into a powder or a puree or something like that. That's going to be more mechanical, right? It's not the same thing as taking a hydrogenated oil or pressing an oil out of something, heating it up, putting some hydrogen atoms into it, and then adding in this this texture from a bug somewhere, and then that's chemical processing, right? So even picking strawberries from a field, washing them would be considered processing. So when it comes to that, I totally think tempeh, tofu, edamame. Well, edamame is going to be your immature soybean. These are going to be totally good to go, right? Minimal processing, as little ingredients as possible, not a Frankenstein food, right? Lentils is going to be my next big favorite because they're going to be the highest protein legume aside from your edamame or your soybeans. Now, seitan, I do share it here because some people are okay with gluten. For me, I'm really not big into gluten at all. I've been mainly gluten-free the last few years aside from couple things here or there, like a friend's birthday party. I'm like, man, I'm gonna eat that cake. I'll be okay. I gotta live a little bit. But generally I stay away from gluten, mainly due to the glyphosate exposure in the United States. So glyphosate is like the Monsanto Roundup chemical. And we're already getting exposure to it through other foods and through the water. It's just, if I know that there's something toxic, just like I'm not gonna use the Lysol sprays and all that crazy stuff in the house, I don't wanna bring it in my body. However, if you're okay, you don't have any problem with gluten as far as a protein, you can eat it. This is super high in protein. But we have so many other options that if you don't need it, I would say maybe try some other stuff. So we've also got textured pea or soy protein. So has anyone ever had any of that TVP or soy chunks, soy curls? Awesome. Yeah, so what they're doing, they're extracting the fiber and the fats from either peas or from soybeans. They bring it into a paste, and then they just run it through a little bit of a processor just to kind of create different shapes with it. So it's a great way to add in a bit of extra protein into soups or into tacos and things like that. Even oatmeal, believe it or not. Now, we can also talk about pastas, right? So back to just minimal ingredient pastas. We can get an edamame pasta or a lentil pasta, which is made with a single ingredient, and it's so good. And it's so much better than just a whole wheat pasta where you're getting a lot more of the gluten, you're getting a lot less protein. And these are actually just crazy high in protein. So if you're ever at a loss of what do I eat, I need something healthy, something easy, you can make a box of pasta in 6 minutes and you got 4 meals out of it. Simple. I also love powdered peanut butter. So PB Fit, anyone ever tried PB Fit? Yeah, right. So excellent. Again, they're just extracting the fiber. There's still some fat in there, some healthy fats, but you can just mix it with water. You can even get this without salt, without any sugar added to it. My favorite snack is just a sliced apple with some PB Fit, and it's less than 200 calories, 15 grams of protein. It's way better than a protein bar, and it's got 2 ingredients. So that's awesome. So medium protein, we're gonna have basically our other beans and other peas. Now, split peas are gonna be probably the highest in peas. Technically, they could probably be over here, but I want you guys to think about beans outside of lentils and edamame as more of your secondary source. I generally like to think about bringing 2 protein sources together in a meal. And if you do that, if that's the only thing you take away and you're trying to get more protein, 2 protein sources, you probably don't have to think about anything else, right? So that's going to be a nice tip to take home. But chickpea pasta, like Banza, anyone try that? That might have been like, I know that was my first kind of plant-based pasta, like a bean-based. That's good, but it's going to have a lot less protein than, say, lentil or edamame, just because chickpeas have a little bit less. But still, I don't mean to say don't eat chickpeas. I absolutely love chickpeas, garbanzo beans. Quinoa is also really good. So if you're comparing, should I have rice or quinoa? I prefer the taste of rice, but quinoa totally wins as far as protein and fiber. So if you had to choose, quinoa is a great option. Now, nutritional yeast also could probably be over here, but you'd have to eat a lot, I probably do. I eat a few tablespoons a day, but 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast is going to give you another like 5 grams of protein, about the same in fiber. So very easy. And anyone here not like nutritional yeast, or has anyone here not tried it? Okay, that's going to be, Charlotte, you're going to have to hook her up. Try a little bit. Try a little bit. It's just like think about it like a seasoning that you're adding on, right? And it's got a little bit of a cheesy flavor. So I absolutely love it. And you can add it into different things too, and you wouldn't even realize it's there. So the other one is going to be seeds. So I am a big fan of seeds. Nuts are going to have some protein too, but nuts are generally going to be, I don't know, I see like seeds as like a way to accent meals and things like that, whereas nuts, nothing wrong with nuts, but it's very easy to eat a whole bag of nuts, right? Of course. So that's why I'm not like, just eat a lot of nuts. And then you're like, well, why can't I hit my calorie goals? Oh, okay. It's probably the nuts. I had a handful. Are you sure it was just a handful? Well, it was like 2. But seeds, they're going to give you a perfect, almost perfect ratio of fats, fiber, and protein. So generally speaking, across the board, a tablespoon of whether it's hemp, pumpkin, sunflower, flax, chia, I'm sure there's some other ones on there. You're going to get about 3 grams of protein, 3 grams of fat for like a tablespoon of seeds. So I love adding those onto a meal after the fact. I create a meal, add in a tablespoon of seeds. Absolutely love. Actually, this is cool. I love acai bowls. I really love them because it's raw, it's cold, it's all this fruit. And I switched from granola, which always, I could never find a granola that had no fat or no sugar added, no oil added. So one day I ran out and I was like, well, I got some seeds. So I did pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, and coconut flakes. And I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. Like, this is my favorite new granola. So if you see it on store shelves in a couple years, you'll please purchase and support.
Ryan, I have a question.
Sure.
What do you think about like the mushroom protein stuff? That's like alternative meat that's mushroom based. I'm not talking about Impossible or Beyond.
Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah, I think they're good. I've tried a few, like meaty is like a mushroom steak. Yeah, I just didn't prefer it. I do like mushrooms, but it's when you have something that's like single ingredient, and you look at the back of it and it's like, oh, it's just like either mushroom root or it'll say like mycelium root or, just a couple little things added, totally good to go. And, I'm glad you brought that up. Oh, it's not like the Beyond Burger or that. As you guys notice, like you don't see any like daring chicken or Beyond or anything like that here. That could work in a pinch, also if you're transitioning, right? I personally don't want things to replicate the taste of meat because then that just like messes with my head. That stuff could work, but generally it's going to be a lot of added oil with those things too. So like when you think about a Beyond Burger, which this is funny, in the market here, the supermarket in Kawita, they've got a rack with Beyond Burgers and Beyond sausages. So that's cool. It's cool that it's available here, right? But when you have all these extra ingredients, all the oil, generally most of those prepackaged like fake meats are just going to be like just processed. Soy protein isolate or wheat protein isolate with some oil and it's a lot easier and way cheaper to eat this stuff, right? But very good question.
What about Sprouts? Is it a volume thing?
Yeah. Well, so Sprouts, when I talk about the Power Meal formula, I consider Sprouts being like the nutritious topping. Like you could definitely put a big bowl of bean sprouts and like, eat those if you're going raw. So that would be good, but it would be higher volume. That's the biggest thing. You'd have to probably eat a good amount to get, and to give you guys an idea, I'm looking to get about, well, this is perfect because this goes in the next slide. How much protein should I get, right? So you guys heard me say the recommended, amount just from dietary guidelines from the government, like 40, 50 grams of protein. Anyone want to guess what I might say? Like how much protein should we be getting? 30 per meal, okay. So we'd say 3 meals, like 90, okay, that's good. 100 grams per 100 pounds, okay. So 1 gram per pound of body weight, that kind of idea, okay.
1 gram per pound of your goal body weight.
Goal body weight, ooh, I like that, yeah. Any other ideas? Good, okay, excellent. That's very, very good suggestions, right? So we're gonna find it's gonna be maybe slightly more conservative, just because I want people to have success too, right? So generally, because we got to be able to achieve something, like, yes, I'm doing it, great. As a baseline, this is super general. Obviously, for every single person I'm working with, we're going to make it very individualized. But I'd say 75 a day if you're a woman, 100 grams plus a day for men. So going back to the idea of 1 gram per pound of body weight, that is the conventional wisdom in the fitness bodybuilding world. However, when we look at actual science, like peer-reviewed meta-analyses of multiple studies of people eating protein, training, seeing results, what they found is the upper limit to get any benefit as far as muscular gain or anything like that, performance gain, is 0.6 to 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. So it's a little bit less. So let's just say you're 150 pounds, you don't have to eat 150 grams. So Ashley, you'd said 100 or gram per pound of goal body weight. I'd say that's a better, more easier approach to hit because, let's just say you're 150 pounds, you want to go to 140. Well, now you've dropped the measuring stick down a little bit lower. But to give you guys an idea, I'm in I go between 160, 165. I get 120, 130. Some days I'll get 160 grams of protein. I'm not trying to do that. So it's not like a limiter of my success. So, and that's great because if you're trying to get 1 gram per pound of body weight and you're doing it on a plant-based diet, it's gonna be a lot harder when you're not eating meat, dairy, yogurt, all that stuff. So that hopefully, I know when I tell my clients that, they're like, okay, cool, nice, great. I don't have to stress protein, because we want to remember there's a lot of other foods in the world that are beneficial for us, like fruits and vegetables. So we don't only want to think just eating nothing but fake meats to try to get all this protein. So very good ideas. So, and I think I had one more thing to say on the protein too. So 100 grams plus, 75 grams plus. If you're naturally getting a gram per pound of body weight and you're hitting your calorie goals and you're still getting a variety of fruits and vegetables and it's easy for you, absolutely no problem. You might get an extra benefit of the thermic effect of the extra protein. However, if the goal is muscle building, you could probably find guys online who are, similar to me, also vegan coaches who are getting, one guy's experimenting getting 80 grams a day, and he's a really fit guy. So it's just you don't have to go crazy with it. What matters the most is calories, 100%. Because I could eat nothing but protein, and if I'm under calories, I'm not going to be able to gain weight or I'm not going to be able to lose weight, right? So calories are going to be the major thing, whether you want to gain weight, whether you want to lose weight, or you want to kind of keep your weight the same and focus on body recomposition. So let's just say in that example, 150 pounds. Well, I want to stay at 150, but I want to lose, say 10 pounds of fat, build 10 pounds of muscle. That's an approach that's available too, but we have to understand calories. So does anyone here, let's just say, raise their hands. Does anyone here following a calorie goal right now and you're tracking calories or looking at that? Okay, awesome. Has anyone ever looked at their calories before to see what the goal could be? Okay, excellent. So we got a good variety, and this is going to be awesome to share with you guys. So how would we figure out how many calories we need? I got two options for you that's going to make this really, really easy. So the first one, we can just multiply your goal weight by 12. Because what we're trying to do is just create a starting point. All of this is an estimation. Even when I work with somebody one-on-one, we're still going to have to start with some general estimation. Now, I'm going to be able to do a lot more than just this, right? I'm going to look at someone's food logs. What have you been eating the last 7 days? And be able to actually determine, okay, based on your goal, whether you want to gain weight, whether you want to lose weight, or just do a recomposition, this is where we need to focus on calories. Oh, sure, I got some right there. Thank you. So this is an easy one, right? So right now you can do this on a calculator if you want, but what's your goal weight? Times it by 12. So in this example, 150 pounds times 12, 1,800 calories. So where do we go from here? The goal to understand whether this is working or whether it's not. We're going to eat that amount of calories every single day. Let's just say in this example, it's for the men, 100 grams of protein, and we're going to track your results for 2 weeks. So I give 2 weeks period of time. So this is something funny. If you've ever been on a journey and you're trying to lose any weight, and if you've ever done that or if you want to do it, this is something that happens with every single person I work with. We're doing this, everything is going good, you're sticking to the plan, you're losing weight, right? So imagine you're going down the scale, just going down the steps, and then all of a sudden, scale goes up, and everybody freaks out because it's like, oh my God, it's not working. Your body's ability to lose fat is not a linear process, right? As human beings, we like things to be simple, logical, linear. You know, you walk down a flight of steps, you're not expecting one to go down. And quick funny, remember we were at this one spot and there is this store and the steps were going down and there was this one that was like a wide single step, but it was, I guess, painted or marked like it was 2 steps, and we both did this on it. But that's what the body transformation process can feel like. Oh, I missed a step, even though I'm still walking the same direction. The fat loss process is not linear. I've never seen anyone's like scale results go down like that each time. It's gonna do this. You're gonna have maybe lower highs, lower lows as you go. So it's just normal. And we'll have, you could eat one meal out at a restaurant. You have a little bit less water that day. Maybe, you had more sodium, and next thing you know, oh my God, the scale went up 3 pounds in one night. But it's not actual body fat, right? That's why we want to give it at least 2 weeks of time so we can all understand, oh, my weight fluctuates. That's why I said, what's my weight? 160 to 165, right? No one's ever just flatlined. This is the weight that I am, which is also why, we don't need to get so hung up on that scale number. Now, I have another option for you guys, which is super cool. And you can scan this QR code and use my calculator, right? So this is going to pull up a few things for you right now. The first thing is going to be your basal metabolic rate. So has anyone ever heard that? BMR, not the BMI, but BMR. Awesome. Your basal metabolic rate is essentially how many calories your body needs at rest. So imagine I woke up today and I really didn't feel like coming out here and doing the yoga class. And I really didn't feel like doing this workshop. And I'm like, I'm not even going to open my eyes. I'm still going to burn 1,700 or so calories just by sitting there, not even moving my fingers. So when we think about that, that is your baseline. Now, when you start walking, when you start eating and digesting, when you start working out, you're going to be burning more and more and more calories, right? So that's why when we understand your basal metabolic rate is a baseline, then, of course, all those other things, it's still estimations again, right? But you'll see on this calorie calculator, it's going to give you a good idea based off of where your goals are on where you should find your starting calories to be. Sure.
Can never do the scan. Do you have like a website for?
Oh, yeah. If you want to do that, it would be Conscious Fitness, CONSCI.
Oh, you send it to the
OUS? Sure. consciousfitness.io/calculator. I try to make it a little easy. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. It wasn't going to be a weird one. It's /calculator-1267. No. I'm glad I had it right because that could have, that's not very professional, Brian. Awesome. So yeah, when you see on that calculator, You're going to get the calorie results based on your goal weight. And you're also going to see a protein range, right? So that range is going to be your most minimal amount of protein you should get all the way up to that 1 gram per pound body weight number. Because again, you can have more protein as long as it's not stressing you out, as long as you hit your goals. So let's look at this with 2 examples, because I do work with people on both sides of the spectrum. I have some clients that want to lose weight. I've had people lose over 100 pounds. But then I also have people that need to gain weight, right? Chronically, maybe under eating, maybe just like stressed, which is why I was going back. I guess I don't have it on the slide, but for your BMR, right? I told you mine is in the 1700s. Before, in my old before picture, I was not even eating 1700 a lot of days. So what did that do? It crashed my metabolism. So my metabolism basically saying, hey, we're not getting enough. So your energy is going to be lower. Oh, now I need more caffeine. Oh, I'm not getting enough food. Okay, well, I don't have the energy to really, perform well in workouts and things like that. So a lot of times I will work with some people that are getting 1,000, 1,200 calories a day when they need at least 1,500, 1,600. So in that case, we want to focus on weight gain. Even if they want to lose weight, we actually have to bring your body's metabolism back into a safe space. So what we want to do, let's just think about weight loss. If the goal is weight loss, you're going to start with your calorie goal that we figured out with the calculator or by that easy equation, goal weight by 12. And you're going to spend 2 weeks eating at that level, right? So that would be using like MyFitnessPal or my app, wink, wink, to track your food. And if you are losing weight, then you just stay where you're at. Things are going good. Excellent. I found my calorie goal. And in a lot of cases, that does work out first time. Now, if your weight has not budged, we are going to lower calories by about 100 to 200 a day, right? Because what we're trying to do in this thing, we're trying to create what's called a calorie deficit. Has anyone not heard that term before, like a calorie deficit? So that's what's needed to be able to lose weight. So if everybody in this room, if I trapped you in here and said, you can't eat for the rest of this retreat, everybody's going to lose weight, right? So whether you have a hormonal issue or whether you're in menopause or whether, you stubbed your toe, you can't escape that fact, that reality, that if you're not getting enough total calories, your body will start pulling from your own body. So if we are eating right and we're doing everything right and we're tracking it, and if you haven't lost the weight, then that means we're going to either have to lower calories from food or we're going to have to increase activity through steps. So if you have gained weight based on these numbers, then we need to lower them a little bit more. Because if you're seeing the scale rise after 2 weeks when you're trying to eat at a little bit less or these numbers, okay, well, that's why the 2 week period is the testing period. And I'll do this for obviously I know my own numbers and all that now, but any client of mine, we're spending that first 2 weeks dialing things in. Now, after that, you're going to retest every 2 weeks, right? So if you find a good spot, generally speaking, once you find a good calorie deficit range, you could stay there for like 4 months, maybe even 6 months. Like some of my clients that have 50 plus pounds to lose, they can stay in a calorie deficit for like 6 months and be totally fine. Now, if the goal is weight gain, right? We want to put on either more muscle or if we feel like we're underweight based off of where we want to be, then we're going to do the same thing but reverse. So if we see that we're slowly gaining weight, I would say weight gain is going to be a different process. Muscle gain is a lot slower than fat loss. So you wouldn't want to see, with fat loss, you can lose a half pound up to a pound and a half, maybe 2 pounds if you have extra to lose every single week, and that's healthy. However, if you're gaining a pound a week, and you're trying to put on muscle, and you're seeing, oh, I gained a pound this week, I gained a pound, and at the end of the week, or the end of the month, you gain 4 pounds, you gain body fat, for sure. Like, you can't do it that fast. You didn't gain 4 pounds of muscle, trust me. I wish it was that easy. It's a lot slower of a process. So if your weight has not budged, then you're going to raise calories up. So again, this is just after a 2 week period. You're really only going to see a little bit of a change. And if you've lost weight, that's the problem. Then we definitely need to raise up for, a bit more. So that 200 to 300. So that kind of gives you an idea about how to fluctuate, calories in and calories out. So any questions on this part at all?
Yeah, what do you think is a normal or like a reasonable goal for weight gain when you're trying to build muscle? Is it like a half a pound a week? Or
No, it'd probably be like 5 pounds a year about.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you measure it, I guess? Like,
Yeah, strength. So that's a really good question. So generally speaking, if someone's trying to lose weight, we're going to look at scale weight, but also measurements. That's going to be the biggest thing. And also, honestly, photos in mirror. Because you could lose 5 pounds and you're like, this could be your problem area. But maybe you lost weight from back here and like your ring's getting looser and all of that. But with muscle gain, honestly, I just have my clients not even really pay attention to the scale. We focus on strength, just making sure you're getting stronger, which we'll get into with resistance training, but just seeing your strength increase and maybe just checking the scale like monthly at that point. So yeah, so men obviously can put on a bit more muscle in the duration of a year. First year, maybe potentially like 10 pounds. So if you ever seen like, oh, this Hollywood actor put on 30 pounds of muscle in 90 days because he took steroids, like that's why, like that's 100% why. So that's, the industries and the media stuff really just overemphasizes or just over-exaggerates or just kind of sometimes just straight lies. But they have their own careers and stuff, so they're trying to like keep that back. Like The Rock is a famous one. The Rock has never admitted to steroid use, but I'm like, you're huge, bro. Like, on side note, just on that, he has dropped a lot of weight, if anyone's seen, because probably some medical issues. So he hasn't necessarily said, hey, I was doing steroids before and now I'm not, but it kind of goes to show you that that's where that came from. So what we'd like to do, now we have our calorie goals, we have protein goals. What types of foods are we going to fill these out with? Well, I like to focus on at least 80, maybe even 90% lower calorie density foods, right? So what are going to be your natural foods? Beans, legumes, veggies, fruits, your grains, right? All that stuff. And we know beans, legumes, even your veggies and your fruits are going to have some protein, right? They're going to add to your goal. And like I mentioned, the minimally processed ones, tofu, tempeh, pea protein, things like that. So like a protein powder. I love protein powders. I think they're like, if you find a good protein shake, to me, it's like a nice dessert snack. It's a lot better than getting a milkshake from McDonald's like I used to do when I was young, right? But I don't want anyone to rely on that stuff, right? So if you have one a day, cool. Just don't try to replace it, with all your meals and things. So we can also, I want everyone to understand that, I want you to be a robot. We're human beings. We're here to enjoy. So you don't have to be super perfect to be able to reach your goals. So when we think about higher calorie density foods, I'm not saying let's eat Oreos, which are vegan, which is wild. Yeah, 100%. But, that's where your nuts, seeds can come in. Some dark chocolate, if you like some nut butter, protein bars, in some cases, some people are going to have oil. If you are going to have oil, I would say if you don't cook it, it would be a lot better. 100%, like an olive oil or avocado oil would be the best choices, but I would rather you eat an olive or eat an avocado instead, that would be better. You'll be in this category. But yeah, protein bars in like, if you're traveling, if you got stuff, I'd say, honestly, I used to eat a lot of protein bars. I've been a protein bar addict. I really stopped just because it really has thrown me off the more whole food thing. So this is more of like here and there, maybe not everyday staples, right? I would like to stick to nuts, seeds, things like that. I would also say like the avocados, coconuts for really healthy fats would be in that category. So when you look at it like this, it goes back to the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. You're going to get 80% of your results from 20% of the inputs. And in this case, we want 80% of your diet to be healthy, whole food, minimally processed. If you've got 10 to 20% of Oreos, you can still do it. And this is a cool thing I like to share. There are 2 buckets to think about when it comes to your food and how it affects you, right? So a lot of times, one of the first things I talk to like a new client or a new prospect about, they're saying like, well, I eat healthy, but I can't lose any weight. And then there's the case where someone could be eating complete junk and they look fit. So how does that work? Well, the reality is eating healthy and losing weight or gaining weight are just two mutually exclusive things. Now we can combine them both, right? We can eat very healthy and, be as fit as you want. And I mean, we got to think about it. There's long-term health, there's disease prevention, there's like, hey, I don't want to be on medications when I get older. I'm going to eat healthy food. And then there's, of course, people who are just doing the craziest things to look healthy, right? And they could be eating a bunch of junk food. Like go on Instagram, you're going to find plenty of people who eat the craziest stuff that look great. They look healthy, but who knows where they're going to end up, right? Who knows how that's affecting their organ health, right? So we want to understand there's the health bucket, and then there is also the body composition bucket. And so what we want to do is pick the foods that will work for both of those together, which is 100% possible. And now you guys, after seeing this, you're like, oh, that's going to be easy. So we figured out calories, we figured out protein. I told you moderate fats, moderate carbs. If you eat all this other stuff, you're going to get enough carbs, you're going to get enough fats, right? But micronutrients, some of the biggest things that, people who are more adverse or kind of speaking a little bit more critical about a vegan or plant-based diet are going to be like, well, where do you get this? Where do you get that? Well, here you go. This is a little cheat sheet for you. So vitamin A, or camote, as they call it here in Costa Rica, or also carrots too, are going to give you some vitamin A, which we're going to convert in our body from beta carotene. The beta carotene inside of the sweet potatoes or the carrots. That's why I love rice, but I switched from rice to sweet potatoes as like a base in a lot of my meals. So I eat sweet potatoes almost every day. Now, vitamin D, I moved to Florida, so I get a lot of vitamin D in the sun. But if you're in a state where you're not getting a lot of sun, I mean, this is true for people who are omnivores as well. You're either going to take a vitamin D supplement, get a lot of sun, or you can do like a fortified milk, like almond, oat, soy milks. A lot of them have vitamin D added, which is really, really important to, it's a very natural antidepressant. Vitamin E, absolutely highest source of vitamin E across the board is going to be sunflower seeds, which is why I really love adding those into my acai bowls. So this is another big one, K2, right? Where do you get vitamin K2? It's going to be in your fermented foods. So for me, I eat a lot of tempeh. That's probably one of my favorite protein sources. Natto, I haven't personally had it, but it's more of an Asian fermented food, but also like sauerkraut is going to have vitamin K2 as well. B12 is an easy one. We're all my nutritional yeast lovers, right? A few people. That's going to be easy. Now, if you're not getting like a fortified nutritional yeast, then you can just take a B12 supplement. And I would say if there's any questions about, well, what supplements should I take being plant-based, realistically, it would probably just be EPA, DHA oil, which is cool because a lot of times, we've heard, oh, fish oil is so important, so healthy because of these healthy fats for our brain and our heart. Well, the fish get that from the algae. So, it's just the fish was a lot easier to market and commercialize. Now we're getting to a point where we can just pull it from the algae. So if you had to do a supplement, I'd say B12 and the EPA and DHA is going to take care of some of the main stuff we'd need. This is also a big one though too, iodine, right? So you're either going to get that in iodized salt or sea moss. So iodine is important for thyroid health. So we're going to need like iodine and selenium, which we'll find in Brazil nuts. You can just have one Brazil nut a day, which are great. Like at first I didn't like them, and now I'm like, man, these are good. Let's see, next up, manganese, so pumpkin seeds. So this is why I love adding seeds throughout the day, because you're getting these micronutrients. And again, the micronutrients are helping your body, helping your cells work at 100% capacity, right? All the different processes that we're engaging with their metabolism, hundreds, if not thousands of these chemical interactions. We need not only the proteins, the fats, and the carbohydrates, but these vitamins and minerals to help us go too. So your omega-3s and 6s, pretty much all of your seeds are going to get you there, and your 9s. And then taurine, which is another one, which mainly going to be found in sea moss. So you can get sea moss in like gel. If you ever go to like a vegan festival, you'll probably find someone selling it who makes it. So that's a good way to support a local business too. So these are all just different ways you can add in foods and not just think calories, protein, like what are the food sources, right? What can I add into my diet to make sure I'm getting those micronutrient components? So next up, we'll jump into exercise. But before we go into that, were there any questions so far that we haven't talked about in regards to nutrition yet?
You and I had talked briefly before about iron, and it's on the micronutrient list.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Tempeh, your fermented foods, I'd say tempeh is going to be big. Spinach, and really a lot of the seeds are going to have a good amount of iron too.
What do you think about cooking in cast iron? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, we had talked about that. So it can be good when you need the extra iron. I'd say what I tend to cook with now though is just stainless steel because it's just going to have like the least amount of extra stuff into it. But yeah, if you're not overdoing it on iron, the cast iron is going to be okay. So as long as like the iron levels aren't like super sky high. Otherwise, I'd say stainless steel. I used to do like the the coated pans, like the non-stick stuff, but you're getting some of those like crazy forever chemicals in there. Same reason why we want to go to like a wooden cutting board versus a plastic cutting board and all of that. But I'd say for most people, unless they have an issue, I'd say cast iron is totally cool. Cool. All right, so next fun part. I never know if I like training more or the nutrition piece more, but we're gonna jump into resistance training next. And looking at really the dynamic here between resistance training, cardio, mobility, flexibility, and how all this combines into what do I do? Like if I'm trying to get in better shape, how do I approach, my movement? And what am I doing for training? So let's think here. Why is resistance training important? I think everybody in the world should be resistance training, right? Why? Builds muscle. It raises your metabolism. It increases the shape and the definition of your body. It prevents muscle loss and aids in fat loss. A lot of good things. I think everybody would be okay, again, if we snapped our fingers and had more of this stuff here. And what's really cool about this is, right, if we're just, say, doing a calorie deficit and we're not training at all, you can lose weight for sure, right? But when I say weight, that's a little loaded because when we think about weight, you've got muscle, you've got bone, you've got, the waste inside of your body still. There's a lot of components. You got, of course, just water. All of that is going to focus on weight. But when we think about losing weight, it's either going to be a mix of body fat and or muscle. So what we want to do is preserve as much muscle as possible. So one of the things I often hear is like, well, yeah, I lost 30 pounds, but I look like a smaller version of how I was. I don't look like defined. I don't have like the muscle there. And that makes a lot of sense. When I first went on my Whole Foods journey, I got really, really lean, and you could see all the definition, but I didn't build any muscle. So I was like, well, that's not exactly where I want to totally be, even though it was a lot better than I was before. So that's why resistance training is very important. But as I'll get into, a lot of people do it in probably the least optimal way, right? There's a lot of times where I see where it's just like, well, you're checking off a box, but we're not really growing and progressing. So how can this be done? Resistance training can be done with dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, so more of your external kind of stuff you're normally going to think about. Of course, machines too at the gym. You can also use bands and tubes, straps, gymnastic rings, which I'll have upstairs later today, and also body weight. So as long as you're creating resistance and you're contracting and you're stretching muscles for a duration of time, we would call that resistance training, right? So any of these will work. So it really comes down to like, what do you prefer and what do you enjoy? So here's the thing. This is what I was saying. What do most people get wrong about resistance training? Okay, so holding weights, doing cardio, right? If you're just walking around the block with 2-pound weights, like that's better. There's no problem, but we're not going to call that resistance training, right? It's not the same thing as doing a push-up or doing a chest press, right? It's not that dynamic contraction. It's not enough load. It's not enough force. It's not enough volume for your body to just create stimulus to change. Next one is only going to group classes. Now, I teach group classes, right? I enjoy group classes, But as far as a dedicated routine, to give you guys an idea, if I'm going to do 10 push-ups in my class and I don't come back, in a few days and try to do 11 push-ups, I'm just not going to be able to grow, right? So you have to have consistency. So just showing up, yes, you will hit a baseline of, hey, yeah, say you're doing a group class or say you're doing like a video routine or something. If you're showing up and getting through it, spending 20, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, you are hitting a certain level, which is better than not doing it, right? But what would be helpful is if you made sure you're progressing throughout. So if you are going to like a group class that, okay, well, what did you do last week? Okay, you did, hey, Jenny, you did 10 of these at 15 pounds. Now your goal is to do 11. That would be great. But that's not the case, right? It's kind of, it's tough. You guys seen when we're working with so many people together, it's pretty much the onus is on the individual to make sure they're progressing. So that's why we do want to have a dedicated routine. And I look at group classes being very valuable to teach us new skills and new movements in that sense. So the other piece of it is not getting enough effort, right? So again, checking off the box. Just to do the 30 minutes, it's great for burning calories. It's great for getting your heart rate up. But if you're not pushing yourself, and you don't have to be David Goggins here. I love David Goggins, by the way. But you don't have to be like, breaking your knees and stuff, just, crushing your soul to get through the workout, to give effort. What you do need to be able to do is get through your set. When you think about, say, a set of push-ups, for example. If I do a set of push-ups, I want to do that until I can't do the next push-up, right? Of course, we want to keep ourselves safe, but the more you do it, the more you're able to push your strength limits. So we need to give enough effort instead of just showing up. Like if we were going to go on a walk today and we all wanted to get, say, 10,000 steps, you don't have to really kill yourself to get 10,000 steps. You can take the first step the same as the 10,000th step. But with resistance training, you got to do more and more and more and keep pushing it. That's what we call progressive overload. So if I do 10 push-ups today and that's my max, when I come back 2 days from now, if I only do 10 again and I don't try, it doesn't mean I have to do 11, but if I don't try to get 11, I'm not progressively overloading. So I'm not going to continually send that stimulus to my body to build more muscle and to build more strength. The other piece here, the other thing that people often get wrong is just choosing the wrong exercises, not working the entire body. So just doing a couple things at the gym, leaving, or one of my favorite things is like, say it's going to be one of these, and then, I'm just doing a lunge with a shoulder press. I would prefer we just do the lunge, max these out, crush that, then we do the shoulder press, right? The other stuff is a bit more cardio. So heart rate, but it's not really pushing the body as much, right? As far as sending that stimulus. So it's not like we have to fully break down the muscle and destroy it and damage it. We're really just creating a stimulus to say, hey, we're sending a growth response where we need to build more strength, we need to build more muscle or muscular endurance. So the type, yeah.
How do you feel about water aerobics?
Very good for joint mobility, right? But not really going to be enough stimulus to really produce more muscle mass growth. But to get people moving, when you think about that, there is going to be some general resistance. So it's good for recovery, good for mobility, good to get people moving in a very safe, comfortable place. But as a methodology to build more muscle is just not going to be enough like intensity or resistance. Sure. So the type doesn't matter, right? Whether I do body weight, whether I do the machines at the gym, or whether, I get some gymnastic rings. But what matters is the type of movement. So I really prefer compound movements, which are multi-joint. So a bicep curl, how many joints am I actually moving here? Anyone want to guess?
Two.
Which two? What's
Two.
that? Or sorry, let's just one at a time. Because I want to make sure. Yeah. So if I'm just doing this, how many joints? Just one, just my elbow, right? That was good, right? So if I'm going to do a push-up, how many am I moving now? Shoulders. It does, yeah. Well, wrist, I give it to you. There's probably a little slight movement of the wrist. I'd say that would be a little bit more wrist. But we'd say at least 2, right? Because mainly the shoulders. But honestly, it's probably 3 or 4, right? Because I have my shoulder blades that are moving as well. I got my shoulders, my shoulder blades, my elbows. So it's very compound based, right? So when you focus on a movement like that, you're going to get much bigger bang for your buck than just doing the single arm stuff. There's nothing wrong with doing a single arm or a single leg thing, but we like to put that at the end of the workout. It's what we call like an accessory. So when we think about movement patterns, we're going to have pushing, just like we were doing yesterday in the class, right? Pushing, pulling, that's going to be your main upper body stuff, using the shoulder blades to really help. Technically here, I'm going to break this down a little bit more technically because our press would be like an overhead press, but we also are going to have, really if I expanded this to vertical and horizontal pushing and pulling. So for example, if I do a push-up, that'll be a horizontal push, even if I did that on this table or even on the wall. If I did a row, pulling it into me like this, that would be a horizontal pull. Now, if I do a pull-up, right, that would be a vertical pull. And then guess what? It's just funny, right? Same thing. But if I push up like this would be a shoulder press. If I'm pushing the weight up, for example. So if you do vertical and horizontal across, there's really only 4 movement patterns for the upper body you really need to focus on. We just simplified it here with the press. Now, for lower body, we're going to have our squatting, right? So I'm just bringing the hips at least to 90 degrees or even below the knees here, just finding a deep resting squat. And then we're also going to have the ability to hinge. So hinge here at the hip joint. So instead of reaching down and bending my spine, to tie my shoes, or to reach and grab something, what we want to do is bend and extend the hips back and allow our legs to move right through the hip joint. Right here, we have a ball and socket joint. So building strength like this, like a Romanian deadlift, is going to be very helpful. And then we have rotation. So that moves us through the transverse plane. So we basically have the sagittal plane, which is in front of us just like this. We have the frontal plane, which is kind of lateral side to side. And rotation allows us to go through the transverse. So that's why we want to do things that are twisting. Like in Jenny's yoga class today, twisting like that is so good for your body. So Michelle's question was, if you change your body weight, does that, body composition,
Yeah.
How much does that affect your basal metabolic rate? Really, the answer is like not that much, right? It would be a little bit, but functionally speaking, 40 calories, 50 calories per day, maybe. It's not a whole lot. That's mainly because if you've ever heard, technically, adding another pound of muscle on your frame is going to help you burn maybe another like 7 to 9 calories per day. So it's not a whole lot. And then on the other side, if say you gain 10 pounds, you lose 10 pounds of fat, there is going to be a slight difference, but it's not big enough to really affect how many calories you're eating at that point. So it's like you'd see it on a scan, but it might be like instead of 1,700, it might be like 1,650. But that's one of the things I think a way to answer that in a different way is, let's just say someone loses 50 pounds. What ends up happening is it's not necessarily the basal metabolic rate that changes, it's more of the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or the NEAT. So when I'm standing here, I'm moving my hands around just talking, I'm burning calories, right? So let's just say I was in a calorie deficit for the last 5 months, and my energy, I'm eating a little bit less than I need. Say I lost, 30 pounds. Eventually my metabolism is looking for that stabilization point. And it was like, we need to find a baseline because we can't just lose weight forever, right? So what it'll do is eventually just say, okay, let's just like slow down just the amount of energy we need. Let's just try to conserve energy. So instead of the BMR changing as much, it's just those subconscious movements. So I might not fidget as much. I might not feel like going on that walk as much. And that's how things kind of end up changing a little bit more. And that's more of obviously an extreme not necessarily extreme, but like a longer calorie deficit period. But even with the body composition, it's more so like having less fat, having more muscle just makes it easier to maintain, but not just due to the BMR. It's just because you've already made those changes, and for you to add the fat back in, you'd have to have extended periods of those calorie surplus days. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay, so speaking of resistance training, getting back to resistance training, what's most important is your rep range, right? And the perceived rate of exertion. So what we want to build more muscle, to build more strength, is going to be 8 to 25 reps per set. So that means if I can do squats like this, and I can go to 50, that's not really going to provide the same stimulus as if I was going to do, say, a split squat, right? And I'm like, okay, after like 15 of these, I'm feeling it, and maybe I can only do like 17, right? That's where I want to be. So again, I don't want to do something just in this range if I can go beyond it. And the other thing is, if I can only do maybe 5 or 6 of something, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I'm going to be focusing on building more strength versus muscle size, right? So I like a range of kind of a little bit of everything, but generally when we're thinking body composition, muscle mass, it's good to stay 8 to 25. Your number of where you want to switch things out could be 15, 10, but you could go all the way up. And this is based on, I like to look at, scientific papers on, how many reps can you do to build muscle. Generally, after 25 reps, you're building muscular endurance, right? So you can get stronger in a longer period, but it's not going to build the same muscle tissue size. So our goal with the workout is to always push to increase repetitions or the resistance from workout to workout. So let's say, again, let's just say I can do 25 squats. Can't really do 26. Well, I see here 25 is kind of the upper limit. So does anyone have any suggestions on what I could do to either increase the reps or the resistance if I'm doing 25 and I know I want to stay in that range? There's a few options. There's actually probably like 4 or 5 correct answers. Any ideas?
Can you break them up, or do you have to do them all at the same time?
Good question. We want to do them all at the same time because we want to be able to take that set close to that failure point. That's going to send that signal of like, whoa, I can't do anymore. But good question. Add weights. Excellent answer. So Ashley said add weights or bands. So I can add in like a dumbbell. I could add a barbell. And now guess what? It's a lot harder to do 25. Maybe I can only do 10, right? So that works super well. Any others? Yes, you can change the exercise. Michelle said go to a split squat. So with a split squat, I'm now not 100% of my body weight on both legs. Now I'm going to be prioritizing a bit more on one side. So this is going to be a lot harder for me. So the only downside is now I have to do 2 sets. Yeah, but it's very effective. And I could also do the same thing here. This can get easy, and then now I can add in some extra weight and make it even harder. And then you get to a point where you just keep making the exercise more and more difficult. So like for me, I always like these pistol squats. Like I can't do 25 of these, right? Yeah. So it's like I'm in the strength building range on those, for example, right? So that's not going to be my main exercise for 8 to 25 reps. More of like, I like the Cossack squats. That's what I'm really doing there. Other thing that you could do, you could actually slow down the rep. I would say in practice, if you're doing a slow rep, I generally like 1, 2 seconds down, 1, 2 seconds up, like this. You could technically take it even slower. But I think in practice, I don't think anyone's like really trying to do this because what we need is time under muscular tension. So that one's doable. What was that?
You can hold it at the bottom.
Yeah, you can hold it more, hold that contraction more. But generally, like what you guys shared are going to be the best approaches, right? Add more weight or more resistance. Or with body weight, say if I was doing push-ups on this, I just go lower and lower and lower and lower. So adding more weight or changing the exercise to put a little bit more intensity into it is going to help the most. It's gonna be the most practical. Especially if you're doing like machines or dumbbells, you can see the numbers, you can count. It's a lot easier. With body weight, like if I'm gonna do a push-up like this is, if this gets too easy, then I have to do like a tricep one, and then those get easy. And then I go into like archer push-ups, you know, so stuff like that. And then, I know, and then those get easy. And then you do claps, and then Superman. So I just keep building up. I had to. I mean, I gotta show by physical action too. Like, it's fun talking, but I gotta show you guys. So what we wanna do is hit the muscle groups at least twice a week. So at least twice, 2 to 3 times a week. So you'll see, I think it's on this next one. How do I like to program? If you're only doing something once a week, you're only giving your body that one opportunity to grow or to change. So this is a great place to start for most people when you're trying to build a routine. 3 days a week, full body. So if you do the pushing, the pulling, you know, the pressing, and if you don't have access to a pull-up bar, I'd look for one, or either some rings or something you can hold on, even hang. You don't have to do pull-ups yet, but just hanging. Even if you have to keep one foot on the ground and let your body just hang, decompress your spine, build grip strength. Super, super important, because it's a very, I mean, like we're designed to hang just like these howler monkeys. You know, we have that ability to hang, and we want to engage in it. So if you can do a workout 3 days a week, full body, you're going to give yourself 3 opportunities to have every muscle group grow, right? Instead of just saying, well, I'm going to do my chest today, I'm going to do arms that day, I'm going to do legs there. We need at least 2 times a week. So that's going to look like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, something like that, right? Now, this isn't the only thing you can do. We can also do like an upper or lower body split. You can do, let's see, do I have those here? We could do like an upper lower body split. Like if you're consistent, that's the biggest thing, guys. Consistency is going to beat crazy amounts of effort every single day. So if, you know, I have some people that start working with me and they're like, I want to work out 4 days a week. So I'm like, cool, we'll do 2 upper body sessions, 2 lower body sessions a week, which is great. But guess what? If you start missing all those sessions, now you've only done legs once that week. Whereas if you did full body, you did it 3 times. And if you did miss that one session, you've hit it twice. So this is where I like to start with, this is how I started a few years ago. Full body, just show up, do my whole body. I'm good. I know I've got everything I need. And then when you get consistent, you can go into other splits. So again, we're going to look at these movement patterns, and let's just give some exercise examples. Pushing is going to be your push-ups. So whether you're doing them on a table like this, you could literally start on the wall, same pattern as on the ground, right? And this is one of my craziest cool stories. I have my client, Sherry. She almost came on this trip. I wish she did. You guys would have loved her. But she started on the wall, and she's doing like 10 plus push-ups on the ground now. And she's 50, 55 or 56, like killing it. She just ran a half marathon too. So killing it. So, I mean, it just shows you how to progress. You start more vertical, you slowly drop that angle down. Now the rows for your pulling, basically just pulling, we're doing that scapular retraction. So that could be a cable machine, that could be a dumbbell row. Let's see, like for example, literally just a dumbbell row like this with weights. We'll do the same thing. Of course, the gymnastic rings I'll have upstairs if anyone wants to play with those today. Now your press, your overhead press is going to be like a shoulder press, or with body weight, it's going to be like a pike push-up like this. So we're basically doing the same overhead press, but now I'm using the inversion to kind of simulate that overhead press. Now your squat, self-explanatory, but that's going to be your squat, your split squats, you know, pistols, all that stuff. Your hinging, the glute bridges, just like we did in Jenny's class earlier, or those Romanian deadlifts, which you can do with one leg, or you could do, 2 legs or 1 leg, just working on that hinge action. And then your rotation, like Russian twists like we did, or we can do some plank reach throughs where you're reaching through just like that. If you build out a routine like that and you do it 3 days a week and you keep track of your numbers and you keep progressing, and guess what? When you hit, oh, I can do 25 push-ups on the wall for 2 sets. It's time to go lower. Let's go to the table. Let's go to a kitchen countertop. Oh, I can do that. I can do 2 sets for 25 reps plus on the table. All right, well, let's go to something about chair height, right? That's how you progress. And by doing that, I mean, it's the formula that, not only works for me, it's just for everybody. That's how this stuff works. It's so awesome. And when you do it with body weight, that's why I absolutely love it, because it's like you're learning how to do more things with your body, right? It's not just I'm able to lift more weight, but I'm building more mobility. I can do the Superman push-up, all that stuff. And like, it's so much more fun that way, I think. So let's touch on cardio briefly. Cardio is very, very healthy for our heart, for our cardiovascular system, but it should not be your main focus on how to lose weight. It's very good. I think everybody should. I love focus on just step count, right? Just easy, steady state cardio. If you like running, if you like things like that, there's no problem with it at all. But I want you to know that you don't have to run if you don't like running, right? I see a lot of times people, running down the road, and I can just tell, they're not enjoying it. Because you can tell the people who like running, they're enjoying it, right? So I'm like, are you doing it for the love of what you're doing, or are you doing it because you're trying to get somewhere else? And I'm like, if you're trying to lose weight from it, let's just focus on the nutrition, the training, and just walking. Walking is super sustainable for everybody. Most easiest thing to do. I'd also put cycling there. Like I usually, my goal is like 10,000 steps a day, but I also might supplement that with cycling because I love riding my bike. I can go around the neighborhood, all around town, come back way faster. So a steady state type of cardio like walking or cycling is very good. Now, when we think about more high intensity interval training, like places like Orange Theory or F45, things like that, it's good for your heart rate, good for your metabolic health for sure. I think it's great. I think everybody should be able to run a mile, if you had to, right? If something happened, you had to go run somewhere and go, help somebody or whatever. It's more freedom in your body for sure. But is that the thing that you need to do for changing your body composition? Should you be concerned with running all the time to do it? No. And I say that from me. I tried all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, how did I get here? A trial and error. I used to do laps all around, trying to, get into that calorie deficit when really my nutrition wasn't keyed in. So that's how we want to approach cardio. But again, like the third pillar of this whole thing, nutrition, the resistance training, and then your step count. I think your step count is the easiest way to just understand where you're at from movement and how it fits in with everything. So if you focus on a daily step goal, or if you're cycling, you can look at distance. So as a general kind of a quick math, like a mile on a bike, somewhere around 1,000 steps. It's not perfect math, but it helps you understand, I did 5,000 steps today. I'm gonna run my bike for 5 miles. You're around 10,000 steps. So what you wanna do is look at your daily step count and at least set a floor, right? So if you look at your average over the last month, last 6 months, last year, it might say 4,000 steps a day if you have more of a sedentary job or things like that. If you have a very active job, you might be like, wow, my steps are 8,000, 9,000 a day. If your goal is to, I would say whether your goal is to lose weight or even just be healthier, I would say at least 7,000 steps a day, just for general health, right? If you can do that, you're gonna be warding off a lot of metabolic issues. It's probably one of the best things to do to relieve stress too, especially if you can do it outside, get some fresh air. So if you look at your average steps over the last 6 months, 12 months, set a new floor and create a minimum. You don't have to do 10,000 steps a day. But like I said, you should aim for at least 7, right? 7,500, 8,000, push yourself. Jenny's been rocking it with 15,000 a day for the last few months, which is awesome. But you don't have to do that, right? You really don't have to unless you enjoy it, right? But we do want to have a baseline here. So if you're getting 2,000, 3,000, let's start at 5K. Build that up. eventually get to maybe 7,500. Again, you don't feel any pressure like you have to hit 10K just because it's like a whole, big number. And then finally, let's just touch on mobility and flexibility. That fun stuff we did, the animal walks like yesterday, we're dealing with mobility. So we're looking at range of motion through your joints. So when I go into a squat, it's not only strength that's limiting me, but if I come down here and I start falling back, well, what's going on is I don't have enough mobility in some of my joints. Most of the time, that's going to be with my ankles most of the time. Hips, knees, of course, but usually the ankle is probably the part where most people get stuck here. So what you could do is start with like a raised incline over your heels. That'll allow you to go down a little bit lower. But the more you do this with some more resistance and you just, essentially just keep focusing on going lower and lower, more resistance, eventually you can go to this point and you can experience the full range of motion. Because this is really like a resting pose. So a lot of people in the world just hang out here like all day. Well, they'll eat food here, they'll use the bathroom just like this, and it's very, very normal. Even like shoulder mobility. My arms eventually can be straight up, right? There is more range of motion I can unlock as well. So when we experience the strength training and mobility at a time, that's where we're essentially unlocking flexibility. So it's not just about stretching, it's about creating the stretch with strength. That's where we find mobility. So how do we do that? You can do dedicated mobility exercises, right? Which, depending on what they are, can be fun, like the animal walks and things like that, where we're moving our joints, or a little bit more like regimented and slightly boring. But I like doing things like yoga as well, qigong, the animal movements, the animal locomotion to really help, but exercises like this is mobility. So I am building a little strength, but I'm building the capacity through the joints to be able to move through these different ranges, right? So there's a lot there. So we want to include some of that throughout the week as well. So obviously this doesn't have a whole lot to do with the body composition piece, but when we look at the full picture of you being a healthy, fit, strong human and vegan, we definitely want to touch on mobility because, if I'm here and I can't touch my toes, well, there's a lot of other things that I can't do either now, right? I'm not going to be able to access all the strength through the exercises I'm doing. So we want to look at things fully all together. And so next, let's just touch on rest and recovery. In between workouts, we want to take 48 hours in between the different workouts to allow your muscles to recover. So if I'm going to do push-ups and I'm going to go to my failure point every day, I'm not giving myself enough time to recover. So I need to sleep, I need to take time off. Has anyone ever heard the idea like you don't build muscle in the gym, you build it in the kitchen, you build it afterwards? Yeah, your body's got to rebuild, you need nutrition, you need sleep, you need recovery. So we want to do about 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Hopefully you're getting close to that on the retreat. If you're not, you need to go to bed a little earlier, wake up a little later, so you have time to do all this fun stuff we're doing. But also self-care in those waking hours is super important. So one of my biggest things is journaling. This is going to go a little bit more into emotional and mental wellness too, but journaling about your thoughts and your feelings and letting that stuff come out so it's not suppressed certainly is going to help with just your ability to recover, not just physically, but even like spiritually, right? But getting massages, taking Epsom salt baths, using heat wraps, spa days, relaxing with some tea and reading a book, all of those things are a big factor in this as well. Because, just show of hands, how many of us have thought that to be, fit or be, in good shape, it's like this torturous thing or this go, 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 I got to run myself to the ground. That's what the industry essentially teaches us, right? And if we haven't done that, I'm sure we've all seen someone who's adopted that mindset, like they have to restrict, work out like crazy, like you're punishing yourself. And that's not the case at all. This honestly can be a very healthy, very freeing way of life that's very much so filled with balance. versus running yourself through the ground. And like I said, going back to David Goggins, no slight on David Goggins, I really like him, but obviously that type of mentality is not for the everyday average person. I love what he does, I love how intense he is, but that's not necessarily the model that everybody should replicate, right? Because it's not really filled with balance. That's why he's going through things with his knees and stuff like that. So we want to make sure that we rest and recover. So let's do a quick recap and we'll get you guys out of here. We're almost ready for lunch here. I'm sure we're ready. Now we know what foods to pick, right? So we want to focus on the high protein foods. So when you're looking at the meals today, what are we looking for? Lentils, the tofu, all the beans, the peas, right? So if you're thinking, how should I portion? Because, family style, you can get as much as you want, right? As much as this, as much as that. And sure, the potatoes look great, but maybe I should make sure I get a good amount of those legumes, right? So we want to focus on the higher protein foods first when you're building out a plate or a bowl. We're going to have more of the lower calorie density foods. So if you know what the food is and you don't have to look at the back of a box to read 15 ingredients, you're in good hands, right? You're looking for 75, 100 grams of protein a day. So like Michelle was mentioning, 30 grams per meal is a really good spot to be in, just generally speaking. You get 25, 30 grams, maybe a protein shake in a day, you can easily hit that. We're doing foods to support micronutrient goals. So if you see any of those extra seeds, if there are sprouts, if there's nutritional yeast available, that stuff will help. And if you do want to get into true intuitive eating, it's not just like, well, I feel like eating this today. Like that's not like intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is like, okay, I can go to that cafeteria and I can say, okay, almost it's like estimated eating. Oh, I can estimate the calories. Like if you're trying to, I understand. We're also on a retreat, we're on vacation. I don't want to limit anyone, make anyone feel like you need to restrict because I'm getting 2 plates of food. So feel free. But when you're back at home, if you want to do this, when you understand tracking your calories, sticking to your goal, then you're able to see what a meal, what it's comprised of. So I can look at food and I can estimate calories pretty well because I do it all the time, right? So I can see, oh, this has probably got a good amount of protein. It's got 2 protein sources. There's not a whole lot of fat here. Okay, if I add avocado, that'll give me fat. It'll also give me calories. That's true intuitive eating, is actually understanding the caloric and the macronutrient content of foods and being able to just like eyeball it and see. And that honestly creates long-term success because you don't have to track your food for the rest of your life, but it does make sense to understand the data for a certain period of time to find out what works for you. We're going to resistance train 3 times a week, and we're also going to focus on a daily step goal, and we're going to walk every day, right? So doing all of these things will take you to any of your goals, whether it's just staying at the same weight, recomposition your body, dropping body fat, building muscle. All this stuff is really the key. So I'm hoping I simplified some things, but if anyone's got any questions, feel free to just ask me later. I want to make sure you guys can get some lunch now. I think we're at that point. But I really appreciate you all being here. And for those of you who signed up with me already, we'll do some personal training later. So hopefully this stuff helps you understand what could fit into your schedule. So appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks. It was great.